so.
At 5. Okay, we're going to start the meeting. At 6:05. The meeting's called to order. Confirmation of a quorum. Andrew will be here, and so will Ellery. So I think we're going to be in good shape, although we have 5 here present. Confirmation of the meeting agenda. I think it's pretty simple tonight. I don't know if anybody has any additional agenda items or would request rearranging them in any way, the order. Not hearing any suggestions, we'll move with the agenda that we have. Review and approval of the meeting minutes of May 12th.
I'll move them, Mr. Chairman. Second to approve.
Okay, that motion would be that they be waive reading and be accepted for the record. A motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Against? Abstain? Unanimous? So our first agenda item for the committee is a report from Shawmut Design and Construction regarding project status.
Thank you.
All right. Well, currently nothing's changed since the last meeting. We're still marching forward. Still ahead of schedule, the GMP schedule, and we really haven't run into any hiccups regarding schedule. Everything's kind of been going as planned. The town work is proceeding as well. They're going to be close to making it for our fence move date, I think. I'm not going to guarantee they will make it, but it looks like it's going to be close. So all that's going as well. Actually, not to speak for Joe, but he's here now.
Does everybody understand what that is? That we're moving the fence closer to the building? At a certain 3 more feet?
Yeah, and I also do want to make it clear that we still are going to need 12 feet from the furthest pile out on the beach. We need to be 12 feet away from that to be able to get dozers in there to place the final sand and everything that's being placed up to grade at the end. So
The fence, as we know it today, is moving closer to the building
correct.
prior to, or within the next when?
We're planning on doing that for next Thursday, and that's going to be contingent upon Joe finishing up. If he is not done, he's going to be very close, and we'll schedule it.
When that fence is moved back towards the building, what does that mean to the people using the beach? They have
Going to have about 20 more feet
20,
of space.
30, 20 more feet?
Yeah.
Question, is that all the way around, or is that in the back or the east side?
Back and east.
Back and east? Because right now the east side is blocked from pedestrian traffic.
Correct.
So that'll be reopened?
Open back up for the emergency vehicle access, and then the whole beach side will gain all the additional, everything on the playground side is going to remain the way it is, and across the front.
So so that'll be blocked for this weekend, for example?
Yes.
Is that okay, Joe? Is that?
The east side is still going to be blocked, and I'd highly recommend keeping that blocked. Just because that's where all the town trucks are loading everything with their trucks and loaders and all that out of that gate.
So we've closed that path or access off?
Correct. So it's been on this condition for probably about 4 weeks now with the existing fence line. And one of our goals, so the beach is still on a somewhat of a limited operation schedule because school is still in session. The big push is, the last day of school is the 17th. So we're sort of coinciding this so that by the 18th we create more beach. And that's where really the lifeguards are on full time. Now they're on just Saturdays and Sundays till 4. So the school's out the 17th. The 18th is when the beach becomes more of a full-time activity, fully staffed. So we'll be able to meet that schedule.
Mr. Chairman, it's been on the public committee, but where do we stand with porta potties? Last year, there was, a whole trailer of porta potties?
There is a trailer currently by the Durrell building. Once the fence gets relocated, just like last year, there'll be a second trailer-type restroom on the east side of the building also. So that'll go in to coincide with the fence relocation and the increased use of the beach.
Okay. Thank you, Joe. Go ahead.
I really don't have anything more, other than we're still marching away.
Okay, over the next 2 weeks, what can we expect to see on site? Same,
So what's going on now is the most of the east or locker wing framing is done. We've taken that as far as we can. We need to leave enough room to remove the bolster steel, which is now currently supporting the building. So we have a break between the east wing and what's ultimately going to be the west wing. Over the next couple of weeks, at this point, we've done our underground sewer and our sanitary and storm. That actually was inspected by the town today. With that being finished, we start backfilling, making sure we have our grade, and starting next Friday, we get our re-steel. Re-steel will be on site, and the following week, we will be forming and pouring all the grade beams.
so the grade beams are formed and poured, and what's your expectation about the date of moving the building back?
Right now, so we had a move-back meeting with all the contractors, and it shows on your schedule on the second page. So we broke out the actual specific items related to the move, and it's the first item on the second page. So the backfill to the grade beams, which brings everything up to ultimately the finished height that's going to be underneath the building. That's between 724 and 85. Then we start doing the process over the next, looks like few weeks, to build tracks, install the lifting equipment, install the moving equipment. And at this point in time, the actual building move, which it could vary a tiny bit, but we're looking at 829 for moving the building back on top of the grade beams. Once the buildings move back, the building moving company needs a little bit of time to get everything down. They're going to drop it. It's coming back higher, obviously, because of the steel. They start pulling the steel. They start dropping the building down on top of the grade beams. They're getting it to the height, the finished height. And at that point, we're underneath the building, grouting and securing and shimming and leveling. And
So the last week of August.
8/29 right now is the projected actual move date. That could vary a few days depending on miscellaneous stuff, but and we're looking at removing all the lifting steel, should be off-site by 9/9, and at that point, we'll pretty much be set. The building
How
will be
has the
back.
building been reacting since it's been moved?
So prior to the last round of pile driving, we had the bolster steel, which is the largest main carrying beams of the temporary steel. We had that shot, and during the pile driving operation, about 2 or 3 days in, I think it took about a week or a little more than a week, we reshot that steel again to make sure that there was no movement, and there was no movement. So everything's holding up.
Have people been inside the building?
Yes.
Is work going on inside the building?
Very minimal work. The only work that's really going on, we did some drywall removal so we can start looking at some of the systems that may have gotten damaged in the areas where the floor was, largely heaved.
If you were to
But
walk through...
it's very light. There's no storage of material in there. It's very, very light, couple of guy type of thing, and it's been approved by the building moving company. Their engineer has given us their blessing to go in the building, and they felt as though it was perfectly safe for light construction.
Have we had any vandalism or any lost equipment?
There's really been no lost equipment. There were a couple issues where like a football came over from the beach. But I mean, I think for the most part, we can see areas of the fence where somebody might have come over the fence like at night or on a weekend. And we've been kind of making those repairs. At one point, somebody pulled a small section of the fence down. But we've been making those repairs as we see them. Once the fence gets moved back, we're actually trying to, we're talking to our contractor about making provisions where it's going to make it a little more difficult for somebody to come over the top. We might put a, for lack of a better word, it's essentially a heavier wire, call it a stabilizing wire. It's just going to keep people from being able to hopefully pull the fence down over the top, because the chain link can be a little bit, not so rigid.
On the weekends when people are using the beach for the most part, will there be any of your people on site?
We have no intention on working on the weekends, just because of the, beach access, and there's certainly a lot more people on the beach on the weekends, I'm sure, than during the week. But
I
we
thought
have
that
no
I-
intention to do any weekend work without presenting that to the committee.
I thought initially they were talking about working on Saturdays. Wasn't that in the initial? No. Or did I miss? No. So the weekends, the project will be shut down. Okay, thank you.
We can see the feet print in the sand too, and it looks like people are coming over the fence to get a Frisbee that went stray, and they just come and get it back. There's been no evidence of damage, no evidence of theft. There are times we can clearly see the footprints come in and want to bring it back to the fence line. And that's what we believe it is people getting stray Frisbees and footballs or whatever that they've lost on the fence.
One of the elements of this particular agenda item is public interface. You've gotten your stop signs up, your sidewalk your crosswalk striped. I know there's been on-site meetings about it, but you're comfortable the public interface is good and we have a safe environment?
Yeah, actually, since we closed that east side out with that big fence there, and the signs are up with beach access, so people are like, oh, just go right here to get on the beach, it's been fantastic. The crosswalk helped a lot as well. So that side, we have absolutely really minimal pedestrians walking by, because they're usually on the other side, and they take the crosswalk over by the horse path. And then on the other side of the gates, there's a crossing guard, and that's been great.
There is volunteer auxiliary course guards, because when I come home at night, I see the guards sitting and picking
Yes.
people across the street.
I believe it's gotten, much better and
Okay.
from what I've seen.
Jim, if I may,
Yes.
one question. How much, if any, forensics or investigation to electrical mechanical systems has been done, if any, at this point?
Oh, underneath the building, inside the building, again, we've removed the 4 feet from the floor, up 4 feet. There's areas where we knew we would find damage, so those we've kind of vetted out. The rest of the areas where we weren't really sure if anything even penetrated down through the floor, we've kind of identified the major areas of damage as far as electrical. Plumbing, we've identified a few spots. And now we're underneath the building, and we're doing some of the notching, and we're removing some of the foam, and we can identify things under there that are going to have to be, taken out, moved out. But so far, there's been nothing, I guess you would call earth-shattering. There's been nothing that's been any form of a big surprise.
Okay. And then I guess the reason I ask is because I know we contemplated some of this, obviously, in the trade packages. Is it, whoever this is for, is it still within the limits of the trade package buyout, I guess, what we're finding?
Right now, anything we found was sort of anticipated, and there's nothing additional that we're aware of at
All right.
this point.
Thank you.
As far as the building is concerned, is it trued up and level now?
No, it's it is. The whole building itself is essentially on a flat plane. The building as a whole may not necessarily be, it's on a flat plane, but it's not perfectly level. But when it comes back, that's all adjusted with the lifting and the building moving equipment. But essentially, the building is on a level plane for the most part.
So you don't anticipate any problems, any memory issues or anything like that with that structure? It's going to go back, it's going to be let down on level foundations, level foundation system, and it'll take that shape, it'll take that level.
It'll be shimmed to what is going to be essentially a level plane.
Any other questions from the committee on agenda item 5? Thank you. You have any other information to provide for us as far as Shawmut's concerned? Okay. And we have, agenda item 6 is a report from Colliers regarding project status. Any issues?
Most of it's already been covered.
We love repetition. We're good at it.
On the agenda? On the agenda?
Excuse me 1 minute. Andy, before I forget, we post this, right? Normally?
This?
Yeah.
We do not post these normally. No,
Okay.
we post the DeStefano and Chamberlain updates normally.
Okay.
I can change course if you want to do that, but. Okay.
Yeah, if you need to send to you, just let me know, I'll send it. So this summarizes for us our project oversight summary. We agree with Shawmut that the project schedule is meeting or exceeding the GMP milestone dates. Shawmut has been doing an adequate job with anticipating schedule, milestones, and possible delays, and addressing those immediately. Current risks, which most of this will be talked about later in the agenda. We do have an architectural supplemental instruction that will change a few things with the design, but we'll go over that later, and I'm sure Kevin will give a full report on that. We do have some revisions to structural steel shop drawings. We're trying to get to a place where Shawmut can procure the structural steel so that it can be galvanized. There is a lead time to that. So that's all part of ASI 2 as well. That's really all that we see right now as anything that's an actual risk to the schedule. The progress summary, I'm not going to go through this completely because Mark Vincent gave you a good idea of where he's at and what's going on outside. In terms of inspections, Shawmut has had the Town of Fairfield Building Department Fire Marshal's Office out there performing inspections where required. DeStefano and Chamberlain have been out there performing their required statement of special inspections. And we've been out there just in terms of a quality assurance perspective to make sure everything's, nothing to date has come up as, unless you can correct me if I'm wrong, nothing has come up as a rejected item in an inspection. And you sent out the pile driving report, so we're up to date with inspections. We don't anticipate any issues there. Quality, everything's been generally acceptable. We haven't had any issues come from DeStefano and Chamberlain or the town. We haven't seen anything that's raising a red flag to us.
You say the pile driving is completed, is that correct?
That's correct, yep.
At the last meeting, there was a lot of discussion about people in the neighborhood, some as far as 5 and 6 blocks away, who contended that the pile driving was creating problems for them, plates falling off the wall. Has that stopped? Have you been getting complaints from people in the neighborhood?
We haven't seen any complaints since the first time that
Initial?
it happened, yeah. And I'll let Kevin speak to this, but in short summary, we did take extra precautions as a project. We put additional seismic monitors out there while they were driving piles. He had somebody out there at all times monitoring that. We weren't told about any readings that were out of the ordinary. Matter of fact, I think they were well below limit, so I know that there were nuisance complaints, but there's nothing that I'm aware of that.
So we're not aware of any formal complaints against the town as a result of the project? Any claims?
No, we haven't. We had one initial, which was Kevin explained to the homeowner, and subsequent to that, no complaints, no issues. And we did
Thank
do
you.
seismic monitoring, and I believe the results of that are in the file, so that if some after-the-fact issue comes up, we know
Right.
what went on at the site.
So what we consider unresolved, major's the wrong word really, but unresolved issues that we do need to pay attention to over the course of the next week or two. ASI number 2, which we'll talk about later, the parking lot final scope and design. That does have some impacts on things like UI and where we put the transformer pad and things of that nature, so as long as we keep progressing on what we're going to do there, we'll be okay. The bulkhead and revetment removal, that's actually almost done. Joe's team's out there doing that now, so we don't foresee that as any real issue to the project. And then pedestrian safety and traffic plan, that really has been cleaned up nicely. We had a few logistic items that we wanted to get cleaned up and get some signage out there, and I think for the most part, that's been taken care of, so. Our change order summary, tonight, a little bit later, we'll talk about some pending change orders that will be presented to the committee. In quick order here, there's a credit to the owner's contingency, and then there's really one item that we're going to discuss that'll be drawn from the construction contingency. And the third item there, budget transfer 5, we're actually going to table for a different time. Approved change orders to date, we have had an $80 impact to construction contingency for extra signage for the project, and at the last meeting, there was a change order, which is change order number 1, for the delta between the low bidder and the second low bidder for steel. Just quick numbers, Shawmut has, including today's pay application that will be presented, has invoiced about 31% of their GMP amount for payment at this point. And the last page here, there's just some recent photos. This was taken a few days ago of where we're at with the project, so you can thumb through those and kind of see what we're looking at.
Thank you. Questions from the committee?
So the structural steel potential, I'm looking at, I went back to the schedule. Are we talking about the activity for 8/1 to 8/15? Is that the potential impact if we don't get the is that the activity we're looking at?
So this schedule was updated just recently after meetings. Sorry. This schedule was updated after some meetings with the subs and some of the stuff you're going to talk about later. The dates you see here are the dates we're trying to shoot for.
But that's the one activity we're talking about if we don't get the shop drawings done and it gets in the galvanizer, that's the activity, or is there multiple?
There's a couple other smaller items, like some of the re-steel, the rebar, which is expected on site next Friday. Some of those items are part of that is in the new ASI.
In the new ASI, okay. And then is someone going to talk about the UI issue? I call it the United Illuminating issue with the transformer, the pad, and the location. I read that in the updates. I didn't know if it was going to be addressed somebody's update.
Oh, go ahead.
We'll talk.
After you.
Yeah, we had so before this went into construction, we had a coordination meeting with UI to discuss where to put the transformer and all those issues. Now that we're in construction, we had the same meeting with the same guy from UI to make sure that he was telling us the same stuff. And I think the meeting went well, and we basically confirmed that the transformer is going to go where we said it was going to go. We did talk about which way to angle it, which side the doors would be on. We confirmed that there weren't any special requirements they were looking for, like to contain oil fluid or anything like that. So as it stands right now, there's no change. The primary service, or the conduits from the street, are already roughed in and backfilled under where the building is parked right now. So I'm not aware of any issues.
All right, so I was just addressing what I was reading in the OAC meetings and everything else. So that talked about a 10-foot clearance that we didn't have on one side from the Shawmut's meeting.
No, actually, we have the clearance. They wanted to actually make it less so they had more room for their trucks. And the way we left it was I gave the drawings to the gentleman at UI so you could do a little overlay with the truck and the outriggers. And
So they're fine. The design is, we're installing...
It sounded like the most we might have to do is pull back a couple of the low segmental retaining walls so their stabilizers could clear, but nothing significant.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the committee?
Yeah, under upcoming construction activities, there's a line, remove foam insulation at the pavilion building. What's that all about?
Underneath the, I'll let you guys chime in too, but underneath the existing pavilion building, there is actually spray foam insulation, existing. And that spray foam insulation actually has to be manually chipped out and removed as part of the design. So it's a slow process, which is why it's dragged on a little bit. And it's, they have to set up tents and enclosures essentially to take that foam out without having it spew all over the place.
Why does it have to come out?
That would be a question for Kevin.
I was just curious.
Well, just to clarify, there's, thousands of square feet of foam under the building. We're only taking out slivers under, above where the steel beams are going to go. So the bulk of it is perfectly fine and staying right
okay.
where it is. But where we're notching the joist to tuck the steel up, it is in the way and it has to be cut out. The framing contractor, I think, has subbed that work out to somebody on a lower pay scale to go in there and cut the foam out. And I think it's been going slowly, but it's been going well.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions from the committee? I've got one. There's something inconsistent tonight about what I'm hearing versus what goes on at the OAC meetings. As far as the steel, galvanized steel, I thought that there was no problem and we were on schedule with the galvanized steel.
Well, the framing steel shop drawings are back at the subcontractor, which is the majority of the steel. Part of this has to do with ASI 02, which we're going to, Colliers is going to bring up because of the structural changes. And that would be a direct result of releasing them and going through with these changes, as to not delay the project.
How about just just tell us what the original GMP schedule date is for the installation of galvanized steel versus what you think the date is for installation of galvanized steel. Let's just keep it that simple.
So we're looking, based on this schedule that's in front of you, we're looking to install the steel under the building between 8/1 and 8/15. If you look at the column below that, and you see that 9/15, that's your GMP date.
I don't really want to look at it. So you're saying you're going to install real world where you are today, 8/1 to 8/15?
That's the target we're going for.
Okay.
Yes.
Galvanized steel on site, start installation?
Yes.
Okay, and what does the GMP schedule say for that same task?
Completion of 9/15. Install steel columns and W beams. 8/26 to 9/15.
So this GMP schedule says 8/26 to 9/15?
Correct.
And your new schedule that we're looking at tonight is better because it's 8/1 to 8/15?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is we're trying to pick up time in our schedule to make room at the end of the project for the building connection. We're trying to essentially make as much room in the schedule as we can as we start bringing systems online, so that if there is a potential issue, we're catching it a little bit earlier, and we give ourselves some time to get things addressed.
Okay, every couple of weeks, there's an inquiry from the insurance carrier regarding how long that building's going to be in the position it's in the way, where it is on cribbing. So we got to get it back as soon as we can. So we don't want to end up with some kind of a situation where it's delayed and we're already into hurricane season, but so we're running a risk. We know it. We've talked about it. We understand it. But the question is getting that building back. So,
And the pavilion move, we're trying to do, like we talked before, between 8:15 and 9/9, and I think the GMP has it around 10/6. So
Okay.
we're pushing it.
okay. Any other questions on this line item? Are you, as far as Colliers are concerned, you're set? You've made your report? Nobody has any further questions? We're looking at the whole line of talent here. Where are we going to discuss this famous change? Now? or under the change? Under your report, Kevin?
Yeah, I was going to explain all the items and why they're necessary.
Okay, that would be good. So unless there's an objection, we'll move to line item 7, which would be a report from DiStefano Chamberlain.
Okay. So
Hopefully it'll include this issue.
let me start with that because
All right.
it's important. So as you're aware, the bulkhead is being removed. That generated some changes that had to be made to this project. Along with that, at roughly the same time, we had a few other issues came up that we basically folded into one big package that was sent to Shawmut for a change order price. The other issues were that the existing columns under the building are a little taller than we thought, so we wanted to make sure we had plenty of room when the building is rolled back. So we lowered the grade beams and the piles and the fill under the west wing by 3.5 inches, which reduced some costs and increased others, and we'll get into that. We also, as the building was lifted and the old glulam beams were removed and some of the foam was taken out of the way, we saw some conditions that were a little different than they were on the drawings and that what we thought we were dealing with. So we made the decision in consulting with Shawmut that in some locations it didn't make sense to have a steel beam. It made more sense to have a wood beam, something that's below the framing, a smaller size with more posts. It would eliminate a lot of notching and cutting away of wood that's already there. So we made the executive decision that it was in the best interest of the project, and that's why it got added to this list. And then the final thing was, as Jeff mentioned, we've had a couple of rounds of coordination meetings with all the trades on the projects about the building getting moved back. And the result of that has been some things that we felt should be added to the scope, such as slotted bolt holes for the steel, more non-shrink grout under the columns, things of that nature that make the move more practical and less likely to run into problems. So I passed out to everybody's attention a one-page thing. It's in front of you. It says Architect's Supplemental Instructions number 2.
Everybody have that? Excuse me, Kevin. It's got, no, it's
The light one?
got the 20 and the 40 in red boxes. Yeah, that's it.
Thanks.
So this is, excuse me, Kevin, but this is what you're talking about. This is the
Yeah, this is
control
kind of a
document?
standard document that, you know, architects use to give to contractors to explain, make these changes to the documents and provide a price. So along with this were about a dozen or so drawings that were revised and clouded to show what was changed. So let me go down the itemized list here. Number 1, eliminate all proposed revetment construction. So the boulders that were to be built in front of the bulkhead. All right, as you know, we're not doing that anymore because the bulkhead is being torn out. That's pretty self-explanatory. That is a credit. Number 2, we used to have 4 sets of pretty robust timber stairs crossing over the bulkhead. Bulkhead's not there anymore. We don't need the stairs. That's a credit. What I didn't put on this list is, in addition to that, we were actually extending the bulkhead up by about another 6 inches with some timber. There's a credit for that because that's, again, not necessary. Luckily, Shawmut caught that. Mark caught that. Number 3, because the bulkhead isn't there, and I believe we talked about this at the last meeting, we did feel the need to add some bracing around the piles at the locker wing. That's the wing of the building that doesn't have any concrete. It's all timber. That's an add. Number 4, we are eliminating beams that are steel and replacing them with beams that are wood. So number 4 is the elimination of the steel. It was about 40 steel beams and 20 columns. These changes to keep things moving forward were marked up on the steel shop drawings and returned to the steel fabricator while this was being generated so that they could proceed with the correct scope. Number 5 was part and parcel to number 4. That's adding the dropped wood beams where we used to have steel and related connection hardware. And actually, number 6 is the same topic, posts that support those wood beams and some bracing. So 4, 5, 6 are all interrelated. And please stop me if there's master you
Yeah, I
want to
have
ask
a
questions.
question. The substitution of wood for steel, do we still have the same end product as far as structural integrity, storm conditions, so forth?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, number 7. We pushed and pulled around pieces of concrete grade beam on the plan to put them in better positions relative to where these posts are. Did not result in any significant adding of concrete or rebar. But lower down, you'll see that we lowered the grade beams 3.5 inches. Under this item, we did have to increase the height of the concrete piers by the same 3.5 inches. So you will see there is some additional concrete costs. I don't think it's so much for the grade beams, but probably more for the piers that got taller. So that's similar-ish to number 8. Lower the concrete grade beams 3.5 inches, which then generated number 9 and 10. Lower the fill 3.5 inches, and lower the pile cutoff elevations 3.5 inches. The pile cutoff elevations aren't, I don't think that really translated into any costs one way or another. It's kind of hard to even measure. The fill being lowered under the building is a credit. Okay, now back down to 11. Lower bottom of base plate elevations for new columns. Again, that's the same thing, just to catch up with the fact that the grade beams were being lowered, the new columns have to be a little bit taller. Okay, number 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 were all the coordination items. So in other words, once we got all the trades in the trailer with myself and Shawmut, and we talked about exactly how this is all going to fit back together, these were items we felt were necessary to add. We actually reduced the diameter of some of the anchor bolts so that we would have less conflict with rebar as they're drilled in, and a little more freedom in the bolt holes for adjustment. We added shims under the column base plates so that as the building is set down, as the columns have something to sit on so that they're not waiting for the grout to be installed and harden. We added slotted holes in the steel to allow as much adjustment as humanly possible in case any dimensions are off. And then number 16, we changed the bolt pattern for the nailer plates that attach to the steel from large diameter carriage bolts to small screws to facilitate the sequence in which we agreed that the steel and the wood would go in. Banton is notching the joist, putting the nailer plate up, and then the steel is going to be put up after the fact. So being able to screw through the flange into the blocking is really an easy way to put that in. So that's why we made that change. It did not make sense to use carriage bolts as we originally had them. Number 17 is back to a bulkhead generated issue that, I'm sorry, I take that back. That's because the grade beams were lowered. We had to add an additional piece of pressure-treated curb around the perimeter of the building to hold back that extra 3.5 inches of grade change. Number 18, we extended the wooden stairs at 5 locations so that they run down below the sand, because we were anticipating we may have some more scour and disturbance on the water side of the building now that there's no bulkhead there. Similarly, in number 19, we lengthened the handicap ramps with an additional concrete slab and piles, again, so that they die below the sand, so that there's something there if there's any movement, erosion, what have you. The last one, number 20, I don't believe is a cost item. It was a coordination item where we changed the size of the header over the windows in the locker wing from a double to a triple. I don't think that made much of a blip in the budget. So it was a lot of things that kind of happened at the same time. Existing conditions under the building that we had to fold in, coordination of the moving process and the sequence of the work, the removal of the bulkhead. That's why it generated such a long list. And I think Shawmut will speak to some rough order of magnitudes of what we're looking at for this. We have some significant credits, we have some ads, and
Before we go there, let's just look at the list. Questions from the committee?
Kevin, on your report number 44 dated June 7, third paragraph, states transition detail from low-pitch EPDM roof to high-pitch asphalt shingle roof at locker wing. Is that something that should be on this list also?
No, that was just a detail we had to work out, but there's no cost impact. That's basically where the shingled roof on the locker wing comes up and flattens out and turns into a rubber roof. We just wanted to make sure we had the right offset in the framing and the right transition with sheet metal. But no, there's no cost impact.
But you changed the materials, or no?
No,
always-
it,
was it
what it
always
was is,
asphalt?
it was a detail that wasn't part of the roofing submittal, because their Firestone basically didn't have a detail, so we were able to work something out with the roofing contractor. We probably should formalize it at some point with a sketch or a memorandum, but there was no cost impact.
Thank you.
Will you formalize it?
Yes.
Questions? Andy?
The removal of the, because of the bulkhead removal and the removal of the stairs over the bulkhead or down to beyond the bulkhead, do you foresee the need for any hard travel path down to the beach from the pavilion area with whatever redesign, with the softscape redesign or anything like that?
Quite possibly, yes. Any kind of softscape on that side of the building will have to have travel ways through it, and it might make sense for those to have some type of wood or plastic boardwalk. But I think that's to be determined.
Yeah, I figured that. I just wanted to get a statement on that. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry, just to follow up, is that something that's going to be required to get the project complete, or something that we may add on at the end?
No, when the project's complete, we'll have sand bladed up to the exact elevation we need, and we'll have stairs to come down and meet it. So we should be able to get a CO. We'll, later on the agenda, we'll talk about the plantings behind the building and,
Right.
What direction that wants to go.
I just, so that would be a nice to have, not a need to have.
Right.
That's what I'm trying to, it's not anticipated.
Depends who you ask.
Item 17 looks like everything else looks like design coordination. This looks like a design ad. What is this?
So we held the grade around the outside of the building at elevation 12. The grade beam lowered from elevation 11 to elevation 10.7, so we had a little bit more of a grade change to retain with just one more course of pressure-treated timber.
Where does that go when you say perimeter? Does it actually go around the perimeter of the building?
Yeah, so in other words, the skirting that's enclosing the building, it
Right.
follows that. So it's where on the beach side, the sand, or on the parking lot side, the lawn or plants or whatever is there will come up and meet the building, and then under the building, it's a little bit lower.
Okay. So most of this, the majority of these items are driven by the coordination of bringing the building back the right way on the new foundations.
I would say 5 or 6 of the items that I mentioned are related to that, yes.
Okay. Yes.
As far as the slotted holes, that's going to be done in the shop? It's not going to be a burn?
Yeah,
on the job?
I marked that on the submission just so that they didn't miss it.
Okay, and as far as change number 16, what about the environment? How does that get impacted by the condition, the weather conditions, the environmental conditions?
I'm not sure what you mean.
Will there be corrosion? And what's being done to protect those screws that are being...
Okay. Well, the screws are a triple zinc galvanized coated Simpson strong drive screw, and the steel is hot dip galvanized.
Okay, so all right, so we got a screw that's going to be weather protected.
Yes.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions? So this is a sweep-up of coordination issues.
Yes, it
Is
is.
the level of what is the level of difficulty of bringing that building back and having it arrive right over the right spots on the grade beams? Is it normal? Is it easy to transfer all those points that you want to support under the building as it's sitting in the parking lot, and set up the grade beam so that it works? Is that,
I wouldn't say it's easy, but I think great pains are being taken to make sure that has happened. Just today, they had the surveyor on site to discuss control points. Every trade is asking for that information, is concerned about it. The nice thing is, like, for the plumber, for instance, he can walk over to the building and see where pipes are coming from the bottom of the building, and then walk back over to his work area and kind of see what he's dealing with. So,
are there any, are the tolerances tight? If you, let's just say those galvanized steel beams that are going to be let in, that are basically the structural elements of the building, they're going to have to come out over something to be supported.
right.
Are there tight tolerances, or can you?
Well, that was one of the reasons why the grout space we felt should bump up from 1.5 inches to 2 inches. So literally, if the grade beam was 1.75 inches too high, it would still work, because we would just have that much less grout.
And
So,
the concrete trade contractor is aware of how tight his tolerances are?
yes, I mean, it would be unrealistic to expect,
Perfect, right.
perfection. There are tolerances that the concrete trades work to,
Right.
and as long as they stay in those tolerances, I don't see an issue.
Okay. Is there something we should be doing tonight to make sure this project doesn't slow down in any way regarding this document?
Yeah, we're looking for a construction control directive from Kevin to keep us proceeding with this plan. Kevin has indicated that these are required changes to the job, and for me to be able to release my subcontractors on the changes and to keep everything going, I would need to give them a directive as well.
So explain to the committee what a construction control directive is.
So the document that I went over it's giving the contractor instructions, but it's not authorizing additional money. It's just asking for a proposal.
Right.
CCD would actually be to say, you will do these things and give us a pricing to be determined. Basically, in other words, authorize them to do the work first, and we'll work out the pricing second.
What work has been done on this to give the committee any assurance one way or the other as far as the cost is concerned?
I sent everything out to the subcontractors a week and a half ago, maybe a little less than 2 weeks ago, asking for a quick turnaround on pricing. They were all pretty receptive on it. I did get pricing back from all of them. I would like to give rough order of magnitude numbers, simply because we haven't had the full opportunity to vet them, pick through the drawings with Colliers, us, and them, to validate everything. We kind of looked at it from a 3,000-foot view, and the numbers that they gave us, without obviously doing takeoffs on the exact yardage of concrete and all that stuff, which would take time. And we looked, and we feel as though a lot of the credits and ads were relatively fair. I think Ben looked at them briefly too, and from what he saw, I don't think he has any objections to how I came up with this rough order of magnitude number. But as I said, we still would certainly like to vet the subs out, pick apart the scope with Kevin, with Colliers, and really just have, as you requested at the owner meeting, a rough order of magnitude number for tonight.
What's the number?
We are pretty confident in saying worst case scenario would be an ad of $15,000. Worst case. We think we can do better than that, but I can't step out on a limb until I get the chance to vet the subcontractors further.
15. The word, did you said 15?
Ad of $15,000.
That's
Worst
net-
case, and again,
net-
I will stress,
net of the
worst
credits.
case scenario.
With the buildup, I thought we were going to have to go get another grant.
No, Jim, the revetment helped out a lot with that. You
Yeah.
know, we got full credits back for the ad alternate, which was the west side revetment, pretty much at 100% other than his markups. We got, 60% back on the contract revetment. We all estimated that about 40% of it was in. They gave us the full 60% back, minus their markups, and those were some decent numbers for credits.
Okay, so the recommendation from our project team is to authorize this tonight pending I mean, not pending, but authorize this so that this project can keep moving, that we're talking about?
So Chuck and I, our Colliers, are, given a circumstance where we have the time and we're not going to be presented with any potential delay claims or additional general condition claims if this delays the project, we would like to see these things broken out in somewhat of a separate order. But given the fact that most of these items need to be procured almost immediately, there is some potential impact to the schedule if we don't. And based on the relatively small magnitude of the worst-case scenario that he gave us, I don't, personally, from our perspective, we don't see a CCD as a bad idea. Our only recommendation would be, if we're going to go down that route, that we gain some protection of the owner. We word the CCD in a manner of all of these items with a not-to-exceed number of 15,000, but explicitly write in the CCD that the pricing is not final and that all pricing has to be vetted.
Who's going to author the CCD? Kevin? Who writes
It'd
it
have
up?
to be the designer of record.
Yeah.
But yeah, our recommendation in summary would be a not-to-exceed number of 15,000, followed by language that
That work with you?
I would just have to check on the not-to-exceed language. That's it.
Yeah.
And I'd have to ask my superiors on that.
So this is a similar, from a Collier's perspective, we run into this situation a lot on a lot of projects, and when this happens, we don't have full pricing, we didn't have the time to vet it, but if it will impact schedule, to push this forward, we have had designers write these CCDs in effect of the not-to-exceed number, followed by a statement that basically says, the final price to be negotiated with the contractor, pricing and breakdowns are open for adjustment. In our opinion, that protects the owner from,
Is that all right with you?
Yeah, as I said, would only just have to have
You're
my
going to get, if
superiors
you're
on
going to get a
on the-
motion tonight, you're going to get a motion. I don't know where your superiors are, but, so you'll have to you'll have to work it out internally.
Okay.
Yeah. I think we should proceed with this. Anybody have an objection to that? That said, I'd entertain a motion to approve a construction change directive on the basis of these projected changes, including the 6-inch curb, which is supposed to be added to this, Kevin?
The bulkhead cap,
Yep, the removal of the bulkhead cap, rather.
the credit for the bulkhead cap.
That's in our number
It's in
already.
his
It's
numbers,
already in his
it
number?
wasn't written
It's
on
not
my
on
list.
here.
I caught it that it wasn't in
Kevin,
his...
do you have
audit.
any particular language you'd just like to start us off with this motion? In other words, is it easy, is it as simple for us to just authorize the CCD based on this document that you reviewed with us?
I mean, you could authorize myself in concert with Colliers to proceed with issuance of a CCD covering the work in ASI number 2. Does that work for you?
Steve, that's good for you?
Well, we're going
Is
to
there a motion?
negotiate that.
So move.
Motion made. Seconded.
Please, are you,
No, you'll have to ask Kevin to repeat it.
So I guess the committee is directing the architect and owner's representative
wait a minute. Okay.
to proceed with the issuance of a construction change directive that incorporates all of the work identified in ASI number 2,
Dated?
dated May 23rd, 2016.
Sorry.
That's my motion.
That's the motion. It's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Who seconded it?
Rich?
No discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain? Thank you. That work? Kevin, that works for you. All
Thank you.
right, Kevin, on your, I think we were hearing from you.
So,
Any other outstanding design or other issues?
So I've been forwarding, I do apologize, it took me a few weeks to get caught up on my reports. I sent a whole batch of them out earlier this week, and then a couple more today. I'm caught up now, I swear. Things have been going really great on the job site. Have not really had any issues to speak of. As issues come up, they're addressed. Typically, if I note an issue, a problem, something that's missing, on a Tuesday, by Thursday it's fixed. You know, we're inspecting the structure as we're doing the site visits. Pile driving, as we said, has been completed. One little bit of good news is that we will wind up with a credit because the footage of piles installed is less than what we originally had in the bid because they just didn't run as deep. So, might buy a tree.
Are they deep enough for FEMA?
Yes. Yeah, they went down to the minimum tip elevation criteria.
Go ahead.
Kevin, as part of the additional items to discuss, were you also planning tonight on discussing this item in your June 9th, 2016 letter regarding Dune?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So,
I was gonna introduce that. I think the only caveat I would have is I just want the committee to know, I think you do know, that I asked Kevin to represent us on this issue, DEP, DPW, flood and erosion, whatever it is. So Kevin's been out there, rather than having to go back and forth to the committee, he's been out there as our liaison to come back to us on a regular basis during our regular meetings like tonight and give us an update. So rather than have 6 people from the committee talking, that's how it's been going. And I hope that's been going all right. I don't know if Joe's left, but...
Yeah, so, you know, Joe is very proactive on this whole bulkhead issue and what the next step should be. He assembled a meeting on May 26th. It was myself, Joe, Jim Wendt, Joe Biankowski, Jerry Lombardo, Brian Carey, Dick and Rick from the Flood and Erosion Control Board. And the purpose was really to talk about what, if anything, should go back where the bulkhead was. And the consensus was, I mean, there's definitely a desire on the part of the Flood and Erosion Control Board that something should go there. And the consensus was that it would have to be some type of quote-unquote soft controls, some type of vegetated structure, because anything that is a hard structure we'd be right back in the same boat with DEP not accepting it. So what I was asked to do was to re-engage the landscape architect for a proposal to review and come up with something that could be planted there, some type of vegetated dune, possibly beach grass, possibly additional types of salt-tolerant native species plantings that would go between the decks on the water side of the building and the beach. Some amount of them to be determined. As a point of information, we have approximately 85 feet from the rearmost deck to high tide, which is really not much at all. It's a very narrow beach between the water and the building. So this letter is just summarizing what I just said, plus attached to it is a proposal from Bruce Reinheimer. He was the landscape architect we used for the base project. He's a Fairfield resident. He's a local guy. He's very in tune with the beach. He's probably at the beach every day. And dune structures are something that's part of his expertise. So he gave us a proposal for basically doing a study report and come back with recommendations with what could go there. I do want to emphasize what I highlighted on page 2 is, you know, he says, please be aware that there may not be an ideal solution to this problem given the site constraints and the building location. High energy storm events such as Sandy exert unmeasurable and unpredictable forces to beaches and dunes. So we can plant something there. There's no guarantee it's going to achieve the effect of stabilizing the beach. And that speaks for itself. So I presented this to Joe Michelangelo. He asked that I present it to the committee. I don't know what the committee's pleasure on this would be, if this is something you want us to undertake, if it's something you want town department to undertake. I'm just providing you what I was asked to provide.
Thank you. Let's go around. Andy, go ahead.
Yeah, my first question is, at the end of this, what do you anticipate would be the deliverable at the end of this, the $5,000 fee process? Well,
It would be-
$10,000 including
I think it
your
would
fee.
be, so it'd be some meeting time, it might be a brief report, and then the end deliverable would have to be some kind of planning, plan, and schedule. Not unlike what he did for the base bid documents.
Okay, so it would be a.
Okay, let me retract that.
Yeah.
Okay, so what he put in here was a report with
report.
findings and recommendations. I'm sorry. This is not the full design scope. This is basically phase one, come out, look at it, write a report, talk to all the stakeholders, and come back with his recommendations.
He's got roughly 40 hours in that.
I think so. If
Right,
that's
and
how-
I know
if
he's
that's how
got
the math
meeting.
works
He's got
out.
meeting time in that too. So I mean,
Yeah.
not to delve down like hard into the proposal, but I just want to make sure that we're aware of like what our final deliverable is. That we're not getting a conceptual plan out of this. This is a report of written recommendations, whether they be multiple options for soft structures on the beach side, and this is just the beach side.
Yes, this is just the border between the water and the
South
building.
side.
Just so, yeah, just the, whichever way you want to call it, the side that faces the water. It's just that side.
Okay. Second, I would imagine that we would propose that this comes out, this is a DPW expense, this is not a project expense? Or my opinion is that this is a DPW expense and not a project expense.
I don't want to speak for him, but Joe did say that that is possible. It could
Okay.
be handled by DPW.
Okay. I think that's.
So
that would
I
be
guess I
only-
did just speak
only
for him.
fair.
Are you asking for action tonight, or this is just an information piece?
I'm putting it before the committee. You know, you can take action on it, you can table it, you can take no action. It is something we were asked to do, and I think there is an expectation from, you know, some of the departments in flood and erosion that some action would be taken by somebody. So if it's not this committee, then I guess it would be DPW.
Can I put my 2 cents in, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, and please do.
I am not an expert, but I do live on the beach. I've lived there 6 years, and I have put beach grass in 4 times. I can tell you one thing, we've put up snow fences to keep people out. That area is going to be trampled by kids. You're going to get high tide. You can say any way you want when high tide is high tide. When the high tide comes up, it knocks down the snow fence. It uproots the seagrass, because we've tried, it maybe after 6 or 7 years of not being touched, it goes. But as I said before, the roots go down 1 inch or 2, and the high tide just takes them out. I can show you I have lost more seagrass. So I'd want to be darn sure that an expert can show us that, one, with the traffic area, and the fact that we can let it sustain itself to the point will work, because I think whatever money we put in there will be washed right out to sea.
Other committee members?
I agree with Andy. If DPW wants to entertain this and the town wants to do something after the building is built that we're supposed to deliver, it should be on the town. I don't, it doesn't sound like it impacts the building that our commission is to build. It's something, it's like the landscaping, it's like doing something with the playground, as far as I'm
Right.
concerned.
Kevin, you've been involved in these discussions and meetings and so forth. Is this a concession? How does this fit into the whole scheme of things? The
I
new
think
building?
there's just an overall feeling, you know, not necessarily from me, but of the others who are involved in the discussions, you know, conservation, public works, planning, flood and erosion, that something could or should go back there because the bulkhead is gone. I'm not saying I necessarily agree or disagree with
feeling,
that.
or like an engineering-based feeling, or is this? I mean, I'm all for having softscape, but I like to also sort of, to David's point, have it be fact-based. So I don't want to be have the town throw money away over there.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say from an engineering standpoint because there's no guarantee that
Sure.
this is going to achieve. It's certainly not going to have the same effect as having a bulkhead there.
Right.
Will it do something? Yes. I personally can't quantify what that would be.
Okay, that's fair.
I would have to echo Dave's comments. We've seen things all with good intention over the years that just get wiped out by, by the storms and by natural weather patterns. I also don't know how comfortable I feel spending more money and not knowing what we're going to come back with, and knowing that we're spending more money and we may not come back with anything that makes sense. I realize that's a risk that we take, but I think we all agree it's a shame that the bulkhead came out. But I don't know that anything short of a tall dune that's not going anywhere is going to do anything, because the water can still go around the dune. So I guess I'm just not sure. Without seeing anything, it would be nice for us to have some idea of what the options are before we commit to spending another $10,000. I guess is what really my statement.
If I can make a suggestion, since there is a member of the FECB here, if you would like to invite him up to give his perspective at the right time.
Do you want to fill us in? Would that be helpful for us?
I don't know if it's going to be helpful or not. So my name is Dick Mahusky, and I am a member of the Flood and Erosion Control Board. I was at the May 26th meeting. This entire circumstance is, oh man, we're back at square zero. This project had included in its scope the revetment in front of the bulkhead, which was going to toughen that existing bulkhead against storm scour and so forth. So that's now all gone, and what the project still has in it, I believe this is true, what the project still has in it is a sand dune at an elevation of 12 in front on the water side of the new pavilion. What Flood and Erosion wants to do is to just maximize the resilience of that sand dune as much as possible. Flood and Erosion, if they had their own druthers, they would have some kind of structural device there, or maybe a timber bulkhead. But that's not in the cards based on what's the situation with the DEEP input. To Mr. Zeff's point, yes, if you just put beach grass in the sand and you get a nice storm, it'll disappear before it's well rooted. But what one of the approaches to this that we talked about at the meeting is to have some kind of a geomat to stabilize the sand below the surface of the sand, and then put your beach grass plugs in there, and they would develop a matrix to hold that top sand in place and resist scour of routine nor'easters, let's say. If we get another Sandy, that's a whole different animal. So, and we also talked about, to your point about trampling the grass, we talked about a fence around it, and we also talked about how you would want to have some type of a boardwalk pathway through this continuous resistant top of a dune of some structure. So that's, from our standpoint, it's like, that's the best we're going to do across Penfield. And flood mitigation measures were improved a little bit in your project as it stood in, let's say, April. So what we would like to encourage this committee to do is to include this revised attempt at a stabilization measure in your project. And if you deem no and it goes over to Public Works, we just feel that every opportunity, we would like to see some improvement in mitigating the flooding to the neighborhood beyond the beach.
Okay.
So that's, I mean, that's our agenda, is to mitigate flooding to the neighborhoods beyond the beach at every opportunity.
Right.
And we believe we have an opportunity here, and we would like to encourage this committee to participate in executing that opportunity.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not really happy to hear about putting a fence around it. There's so little beach there to begin with. And I think that, I think this is more properly within the venue of DPW or somebody else. So I would move that we take no action. there's a second.
I just want to add, during that meeting, Jerry Lombardo was there, and we talked about, the size of the beach and accommodating as many residents on the beach as we can. And the fence was hard to the edge of the beach grasses, so it wasn't like the fence was keeping people from beach. It was just keeping them off of the grass, period.
Okay. A motion's been made. Is there a second before we go any further? Made and seconded. No?
discussion.
Hmm?
We can make the motion, but we're still going to discuss it.
Yeah,
Or,
yeah.
Or if any other member needs to.
Yeah, no, I just wanted-
I'll second that, that's fine.
Motion made and seconded, and that would be that we table this. Discussion.
Can you explain what the motion is so I can fully understand it?
I'm moving that we take no action on the proposal.
Okay, sorry. If that's, okay.
That's different. I said table. Take no action. Is
Take no
correct?
action.
Any further discussion?
I'm familiar with the geomat concept. I've actually met with the Director of Conservation, Brian Carey, about that in other areas of town, and it does sound appealing. Whether it can be properly incorporated into this or not, I don't know. But again, not seeing anything and not knowing what the thought process is, I'm kind of operating in the dark.
Any other question, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motions made and seconded? Against? Abstain? Thank you. So, continue
I will touch
to
base with Joe McLean,
Yeah.
and just
see where we
I
go.
gave him this, so I'll talk to him about what he wants to do.
Thank you. Did we at one time, in one of our meetings, talk about when the question of the bulkhead being removed or partially removed, did we talk about having the coastal engineer look at where we are today? In other words, the building sitting there on piles without any protection? Did we talk about that, or would that, is that?
I think there was some discussion about re-engaging them because they had provided a report with multiple options for neighborhood flood protection.
Right.
The building itself, we felt comfortable standing behind with the addition of the bracing and the other modifications we
Right.
made. So
There's
we
no
we
need
didn't.
to look at that now that we have this primary defense line no longer there.
For the purposes of the building, no.
Okay.
We don't.
Okay. Anybody want to take that any further? That's all. It's just a question. Okay, thank you. Anything else on this item, which is the Stefano and Chamberlain report? We're all set as far as the construction change directive. You guys are ready to roll. Okay. Next item is the, we jumped at, report from the chair regarding the state of the parking lot scope of work. A question was raised at the last meeting about whether or not the parking lot could continue to be an agenda item. I took the opportunity to speak to Attorney Eileen Kennelly, who used to be the assistant town attorney, is now the risk manager, but is the go-to person regarding FOIA, parliamentary procedures, and so forth. So I had a discussion with her. She also had received information, I think, from Public Works and maybe some other sources as to where we were as a committee. She reminds us that depending on the circumstances, we can address the parking lot as a potential change to the project or potential change order to the project or potential change design. We have to be careful about how we word our resolution, our resolutions. However, we're free to do that. Just to make sure we were all on the same page, I asked our committee secretary and our administrative secretary to review the meeting minutes to see what we really did do. And I think we might all be surprised that we didn't do anything. We, at 50% design, we had a consensus to proceed to 100%. And it's interesting that the regraded parking lot, totally paved with the rain gardens, has been part of the project since February. Kevin, what was the date?
It was first raised as an item in February 2015.
And the parking lot that's now in the GMP, or in the final documents, is the same as it was then?
So the first set of drawings that really showed it the way it is now was the 50% CD set, which was in April of 2015. And it is substantially just the same right now on the drawings.
And that configuration of the parking lot is a regraded parking lot, asphalt, new asphalt, no pavers, rain gardens.
That is correct. That is what is in the GMP.
Okay. So I'm hoping that we can move off that point, and if we want to, if the committee wants to address pavers or the addition of pavers and the elimination of the rain gardens, or even maybe some combination for all I know, that we can do that and feel comfortable going ahead with that. So far, from what I've learned, we can. So if we do want to add the pavers back in, or we want to leave the existing pavers along the Fairfield Beach Road, and at each end of the project, we can do that. There are various opinions about how much of the Center Island pavers can be salvaged and reused, and but we don't want to get in that tonight. The fact of the matter is so far, what I've learned is we have the option to consider this, consider adding pavers back into the project. So to do that, because it's been suggested, and I think we have at least 2 committee members who have been supporting that position, that we will need a design or need to straighten this out, so to speak. We're not going to do it tonight, but that said, how much time does this committee have to confirm the parking lot configuration? A month? 2 weeks? A year? What do we think of years?
In geological time, Jim? or-
Yeah, right.
Look, Jeff can pick apart the schedule real quick, and it really is going to be getting the building back, and then it's carte blanche for parking lot work
Do
for
you,
the town.
do we run a problem of the the asphalt batching plants? We would do it in the fall, right? I mean, you'd want to address that as soon as you move the building, let's put it that way.
Yes. Asphalt plants usually close in early December, roughly.
So on 9/9, we're essentially removing the lift steel off-site. 9/9, we remove the lift steel off-site, start tying the utility lines in immediately, running them from the parking lot, because they're all underneath there now, and into the building. And at that point in time, the site contractor kind of starts moving on to getting into the retaining wall work and whatever other work has to be done from the front face of the building out. And that would all kind of essentially incorporate into the parking lot, I think.
But we do have some early items that are impacted by this decision, if you were to go back and leave the parking lot alone, and that would be the transformer and the access to the building?
Well, any change to that area in front of the building where the transformer is and the ramp is in my mind, critical path, because it could have an impact on lots of things.
Right.
So
Is the committee...
adding pavers, or however you want to phrase it, having pavers, doesn't have an impact on that.
Okay.
But changing the grading of the parking lot does.
Is everybody aware that our project that we have started and have underway, and our plans as bid, final drawings, include, with some cooperation from Public Works, a regraded and repaved parking lot? Does everybody understand that? That's our base project? Okay. So no? What do you think our base project is?
Our base project does not include repaving the parking lot.
Is that true?
The contract with Shawmut and the GMP includes repaving the entire parking lot.
Can you display that for us, please?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
I have the GMP.
Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
It's my understanding that this repaving is also regrading, so there's going to be a slope added to the parking lot? Is that true or not?
Yes. Yeah, the parking lot would be 18 inches higher in the middle. At the ends, it's the same, according to what I understand, Kevin.
That's correct.
And why do we have to slope it? Do we have to slope it?
I think we have to slope it because it's what gives us the functionality of getting into the building with the ramps and the vehicular access and the transformer access. And if we don't do that, then that whole area is going to look different, and I think it's going to look a lot worse, a lot more massive. Even though it doesn't seem like a lot to pick it up 1.5 feet, it does make a big difference.
And what's the cost of that, of resloping it?
Well, the cost to Shawmut is in the GMP, that's included. The cost of the town of Fairfield DPW bringing in the millings and pulling up the old surface and putting in the drainage and all that, I don't have a quantity for that.
Well, in terms of our budget, I don't have it with me, but,
Our budget includes repaving it.
no, I know, but I mean,
What, you mean, what is
what's
it
the
worth
cost?
to repave it?
yeah, it'd regrade it, slope it.
The sloping really isn't a project cost, again, because the fill being brought in is being done by DPW.
Okay, all right.
The paving work is the most significant part of that,
Okay.
and that is a project cost, and, you know, we can pull that line item out to see
Is it
what
right
it's
there in
worth.
front of you? It's 200? Okay. Does the GMP scope of work and the drawings that the GMP is based on include a regraded and repaved parking lot?
What's in the GMP is strictly the asphalt, and that's it. Brand-new asphalt parking lot for the whole area that's shown on the drawings.
Is the GMP tied back to a set of documents, drawings, and,
Yes, the bid drawings.
Yes. Would show the regraded parking lot. I think, to Mark's point, is that Shawmut and their subcontractors aren't the ones bringing in the fill. DPW
I
is
understand.
doing that. But the whole project is that with a raised parking lot.
but the control documents for this project are the whether we call it bid set or final construction set, whatever you're calling it, and the
Yes, that's
specifications that go with that.
That's correct.
Do those documents refer to the parking lot?
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Yes, they
we
do.
actually even have it in our assumptions and qualifications. It's the
Yes.
last item in it, number 23.
We have a scope of work for the contributed work by owner, by the town of Fairfield, and then it lists all that work.
And that was published in the documents?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
My focus is cost. I think that we're picking up nickels and dimes, we're spending extra money here and there, and I think we have to be very mindful. And if there's a place where we can save some money, that's my point. If there's an issue of functionality, as you've explained, I understand that, but I think we shouldn't hesitate to discuss something if we can save some money somewhere.
Okay.
I agree. I think that where our discussion got last time was there was a proposal to change the drainage configuration in the new parking lot. Let's just say the new parking lot's part of the project. And the question was, why not go back to the pavers? That was an option. And then the other option, which was brought in later in the discussion, was why do the parking lot at all? And
Right.
the raised parking lot has some impact other than aesthetics, and that is the transformer. What else? What does a raised parking lot give? First off, we went through this before, many times before. The grade of the existing parking lot would remain the same at each end of the building? Is there a dip in the middle? How?
Yes.
So the grade, the whole grade is not going up, or what's happening?
No, right now, there is a dip, so that you have a slope on each end of the parking lot, which is very closely going to resemble what's in the middle when we're done. Right now, it's flatter in the middle and steeper on the two ends. Existing. Underneath all the fill that's there right now. That's how it is.
And so the item, is that 23? Explains in the GMP, explains what the work is, what the town of Fairfield is to complete, and what the GMP includes. And it's remove all existing paving and porous pavers to be stored off-site, excavate a minimum of 6 inches of excavate for a minimum 6 inches of thick subbase, import, place, and compact road millings as the new subbase, and fill to achieve the raised lot elevations, excavate and rough grade for the proposed rain gardens, install 3 proposed catch basins and associated piping and basins, parking lot striping. So that's what we bought as a...
That's what the town is doing.
That's the town
Right.
contributed
Yeah,
work.
but that's,
That's what the whole
your
project is
paving's
based on.
in
Right.
your number plus that does it.
Right.
So, I'm open to any suggestions about how the committee wants to proceed. And it really comes down to 2 questions, as I see it anyway. One, do we proceed with the regraded parking lot, which takes this hollow out of the center, if I can describe it that way? I don't know, Kevin described it. Do we want to do that in principle? And if so, we have, the project assumes that, and we have the money in there in the project between the town and the committee to do it, to pay, and to pave, raise it, regrade it, and pave it. It doesn't have, it has rain gardens in lieu of any, what do we want to call them? Drainage systems of any kind, any infiltrations, paving or whatever, porous paving or anything. We could add that in. I don't know what it would cost, but we certainly could go down that road of designing, bringing those islands back in, and what the cost would be of either using the salvaged material plus new material to reinstall those islands. We pretty well lost the islands that are, we lost the porous paving that, or porous pavers that are against the building by the looks of things. I mean, it looks like, I don't know, they're covered, looks like the machines have chewed them up. I don't know how good that area immediately along the front of the building is. Is it lost? Is it good? Is it?
Well, before the fill was placed on top of them, the stretch that was in front of the old locker wing was, I think, the most damaged. But the rest of the lot, the pavers were in good condition as they are. It's just a function of when we start to pull them apart, a lot of them are going to fall apart as they're taken out of the ground.
If you left the parking lot the way it is, what kind of an impact does it have on the project scope and cost?
We need a significant amount of additional rampage to get up to the building, and also we would need that to get up to the transformer. Or we would have to suddenly switch gears and go back to a pole-mounted transformer.
And we already have the conduit and everything in, assuming the transformer is going to be at the building?
We do. Right. There's also a limitation on how long the secondary conductors can be between the transformer and the building before you get a lot of voltage drop and issues with those.
So maybe the first thing to do is, Steve, go ahead.
That's right, because if I'm understanding this correctly and thinking back, I think we're commingling 2 points. One is the slope of the parking lot is one. The
Right.
other was what to do with the porous pavers in the
Yes.
final condition.
Yeah.
Okay. Because my memory is because of the building height, we didn't go with the increased slope up to the building, we had to do stuff with the retaining walls, the ramp up to the transformer and the like.
Correct.
So whether that sloped parking lot is paved or has porous pavers or anything like that, I think that's a separate discussion.
I think,
Am I missing it?
yeah, no, I don't think you're missing it all, but they happen to be related because it's the same scope. In other words, it's the improved parking lot. Obviously, you wouldn't need the porous pavers if you left the parking lot the way it is. You're going to have to repair some.
Okay. All right.
So you could address it just, I think, the way you're going, and that is, if the committee is going to stick to the plans and specifications as approved, even at the 50% level, bid and included in the GMP, that's a question. Do we want to confirm that? And if we do confirm that, that allows Kevin and everybody to proceed with the ramps as designed, the UI transformer as designed, so forth. Then you can address the adding porous pavers, which was the issue of the meeting, last meeting or the meeting before, instead of the ideas that Kevin had brought forward, which was slit drainage, added catch basins, whatever.
Okay.
So if you have some guidance for us, that'd be great. If you, I mean, you're a very clear thinker.
No, I don't have any guidance. I'm just calling back on my own memory. And then after reading GMP Note 23, and it's based on my memory, that I know we went through a lot of discussions on the elevation change, and that was in, because we had to, because of the aesthetic look and the other impacts to the rest of the design. I thought that the reason we were storing the pavers was to use them back at some point in time. That's why it's in the scope of the GMP that way. So that's why, in my mind, the grading and the final grade and a parking lot at that new grade was always in the plan, in my mind.
Yeah, okay.
Whether it's 100% blacktop at that new grade, or we're reusing the pavers that we were extracting or demolishing, I thought there was a paver. That's why it's in the GMP. They were going to be stored.
That's essentially right. So it was noted that the pavers would be taken out and stored, and then there was an add alternate price to reinstall them.
Yeah.
And that didn't make it in because it was a big number, and it's not listed in the GMP, but there is a record of what that was.
Is there any reason to pursue this any further until we get to the point where we add the pavers back? Ellery, I know you have feelings.
Are we still going to discuss changing the grade of the parking lot?
No, I mean, my question assumes that we build it as designed, but we address the pavers, adding back the pavers.
We could do that later, see how much money we have in the budget.
You could?
As far as the slope is concerned, if it was purely aesthetic, I'd be against doing it, but if there's a functionality reason, I'm kind of leaning towards going along with it. So.
I think, first of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to clear the record, because some comments were made by the chair that I don't believe are accurate. I think the minutes will reflect, as my colleague stated, that the fact that the, quote, pavers to be stored off-site was a direct reflection upon this committee's decision to keep the parking lot looking exactly the way it looked prior to construction, utilizing all the pavers that were there in the place that they were there. If you check back in the minutes, you'll find that it wasn't until after the GMP, when we saw the wording about the parking lot being paved, that this committee said, several members of this committee, myself included, said, whoa, wait. Where did this come from? We all said that we wanted the pavers. That evening, we took a consensus vote, not an official vote, and we all agreed that we wanted the pavers to remain. At an ensuing meeting, the conversation came up again. The secretary was asked to read back the minutes. We, in fact, found out that we did not take a formal vote with respect to the pavers in the parking lot. At that meeting, motion was made, motion was seconded, and we formally voted to keep the pavers in the parking lot. So I want to set the record straight, and you can go back in the minutes and check it, because that's where we are. Wherever we go from here is another story, but I want to set the record straight. That's where we started from. That's what transpired during the interim, and that's where we ended.
You have a, excuse me, you have a doubt and look on your face.
I don't know, I read the minutes, I didn't see that.
If you go back and reread them,
What minutes?
I'll find them for you. I don't have them with me, but, yeah. And several of the members here have discussed this and remember the formal vote. So there's no question in my mind whatsoever with respect to that. So that's history, okay? Present tense. I've never been a big fan of adding slope to the parking lot. We spent, and I get the numbers confused, forgive me, between the dollars we spent on the parking lot and the dollars that we spent on the bulkhead. But it was either $250,000 or $400,000. I think it was $400,000 for the parking lot, $250,000 for the bulkhead, but I might have them backwards. And it was a beautiful, functional parking lot. So I don't see any reason why we should spend more money redoing the parking lot. I know that our design team came up with the feeling that aesthetically it would be much more appealing, and I'm sure the minutes reflect, because we've all heard, that it would make the building not look as tall if the parking lot was up higher. And as I stated at the last meeting, there's only so much perfume you can put on a pig. and if you're not standing directly in front of that, for any neighbor, for anyone who lives in the beach area, the building will still be 3.5 feet taller, whether you make the parking lot higher or not. So if you're standing in front of it as an individual, out of your car and looking at it, I don't doubt what you're saying. The building might not look as big. But for everybody else driving past, or for anyone who lives down in the beach area, it has absolutely no bearing whatsoever. So my suggestion is that we keep the pavers as they are. My suggestion is we keep the parking lot as it is, and just look at building a little pad for the transformer and a couple of more feet of ramps. Because the parking lot, as it is 100% fully functional and appealing to the residents of the beach area who use it more than anyone else.
Kevin, is that it?
Thank you.
Kevin, this particular idea that Ian's articulating, what does that do to your design, UI, and the length of the ramp? Is that
It makes it not work. Now, fortunately, we've studied about 3 or 4 different options for this parking lot, so I probably have a drawing that shows what that would look like, and it does add a significant amount of ramp. And honestly, I think at this point we'd have to go back to UI and say, what do you think? And I don't know what to tell you. I mean, it's not an easy area to work out.
What bothers them about a change of grade in the parking lot?
Well, the slope for their truck, the room for the stabilizers, the reach from the crane.
But suppose you had to abandon a couple of parking spaces to make sure that worked.
I'm not saying we can't do it. We could do it. I don't see a compelling reason to change the design we have. If it's an issue of not having the pavers, then we should just add the pavers.
Okay.
That, in my mind.
Let's go down the table. Where are you coming out on this?
I think at this point, I would just go with the drawings that we have and do the asphalt and be done with it.
David?
I'm normally not confused, but I'm thoroughly confused. I don't know what you're asking me to agree to or not agree to.
I didn't ask you to agree to anything.
Okay.
I'm just saying, I'm hoping you would come
Well,
through with
again,
it. Succinct, your usual David succinct
My succinct
analysis
is-
and opinion.
I don't care whether we raise it or lower it, I want pavers. I think is that as clear as I can make it.
That's an opinion. Ellery?
I thought you were going around the table.
From that end to that end.
Okay. Whoop. One thing that concerns me is the length of the ramps. I think they're pretty long right now, as I recall. I think they're much longer than they were on the original building. So to add to it, I would have a problem with that. So reluctantly, I will say that we should leave the design where it is in terms of slope. And install the pavers. Yeah.
Andrew?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're perfectly right. I think you do have multiple options that when we've discussed this in the past, and I don't think we were particularly happy with the alternatives, because you're talking about an increase of horizontal distance of the ramps of at least probably around 18 feet more ramp, linear length.
That's correct.
So
Excuse me, is that the number? Is it that much?
Yeah, so for every
give or take,
additional
depending
foot
on the
and
grade,
rise, you have-
the end grade of the ramp.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, if it's an 18-inch drop, it's 1 foot for every inch. So, plus any pad length for ADA if there's needs to be an interim platform. So, this is not a minuscule change. This is significant, and I think we've seen it in the past. It doesn't look well. So, for the pavers, my only question about the pavers. My only concern, granted it's a dollar value, but my concern with respect to the neighborhood is that our final solution for stormwater management, whichever it is, whether it be paver design, paver installation, trench drains, rain gardens, whatever solution, is equal to or better than the current situation. An overall sort of water outflow from the site. I don't care how we get there. That's my preference to do it.
On site.
That it stays on site and gets infiltrated as much as it is right now. So we're not exacerbating any problems. Because we're going to have a higher or a little bit of a faster flow off of the additional slope in the parking lot, but that can all,
Very, very small increment, yes.
right,
It's, I think the word Joe Michelangelo used was infinitesimal.
infinitesimal, I know.
I like that word.
But that's something that's a, when we come into a final solution with the committee, that's the design objective that I would like the committee to have. And, I think that's been a concern that you've wrapped into your design scope.
So,
So-
can I make a suggestion based on what I'm
We haven't
hearing
gone
here?
around the table, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Still
Go
got
ahead.
Steve,
Sorry.
Still got Steve left. That's it.
Mr. Constructionist. Okay, so but you bring in the linkage, the pavers, the drainage has to go with wherever the parking lot is.
Yeah, I mean, unless my first point wasn't clear, I'd rather stay with the current design as is. I think that the current design as is what is our preferred solution, and then we leave open the paver solution down the road and what to do with the reinstallation or scrapping.
Thank you. Steve?
Andy just stole everything I was going to say. My understanding is that the current design was as equal to or better than the stormwater management that was existing before we started the project. Now, given that, I'm looking at the pavers as more of a nice to have than a need to have, based on the current design. So I would like to understand what the cost impact is to doing something with the pavers, and then we can make a decision about that.
Excuse me, just as interjection here, are the rain gardens as effective as the loss of the pavers?
Yes. Yes, they are.
But that's hard to believe, but that's true. In other words, the rain gardens
It's where
absorb...
we're basically creating volume for water storage, which is really the purpose of
But
porous
it
pavers.
ends up in the storm drain, out of the rain garden, right?
Only when the rain garden fills up to the top and then spills over into the catch basin.
Is it less efficient or more efficient than the pavers, the rain gardens?
I think you have a better opportunity for filtration because of the plantings in the rain gardens, assuming that we can afford to put those in.
Okay. Ian, we know where you stand.
How could you possibly?
We could certainly... Are you still confused? You're in pretty good shape.
I'm confused when I walked in tonight, too.
I have one more question. Joe was talking about putting in those rectangular catch basins of some kind. What do you call them? Trenches. That's not the rain garden, that's something else.
No. The rain gardens are along Fairfield Beach Road. They
Yeah.
take the water.
Yeah.
Without the pavers, the rain gardens would be there.
Yeah.
And, a compromise would probably be to leave as the pavers in place along Fairfield Beach Road, start at the pavilion side edge of the existing pavers and slope up to the building, and then reinstall the islands of pavers in the middle. But the question, we almost were there, the question is direction as far as the project engineer and architect are concerned, and that is, do we continue to proceed, because it'll make a difference as to the paver question. They're related. Do we proceed with the plans, do we proceed with the project in accordance with the original plans and specifications as bid, as contained in the GMP and the town of Fairfield support? Do we do that?
If we do that, or to do that, that means we don't, there is no motion, there's no motion to be passed?
It depends on how
Not
you
to
feel.
reconfirm, I mean, we don't have to reconfirm our earlier action, do we?
No, I think someone would have to make a motion to change it.
Right.
Right. Okay, so we leave it alone. And then the question will be, what can we afford to reinstall the pavers?
Right.
Since we have a new surface on the parking lot. And again, just so I'm clear, the slope that is of concern and has been, the slope on each end, the end areas, the east and west areas of the beach pavilion remains relatively the same.
Yes, it does.
So the parking lot in that area, as far as slope and the way we'd look at it, would be the same. It's
Yes.
in the middle. Is it third, and third, or is it 20% on each end, or 10% on each end, or roughly?
I mean, it's kind of a straight line dip, I guess I would say. You're low in the middle and high in both ends, and it's fairly linear in between.
Is there a reason you think it happened that way?
You know, there used to be a berm there. Maybe that was the natural grade at one point. I don't know,
I
to be
think
honest with you.
If we were to think about it, they probably tried to save the trees and the sand berm there and paved accordingly. So they built in that,
Oh, yeah, I mean, the project was definitely built around the berm,
right.
yes.
So we're going to proceed?
Okay, one last comment. Although it was part of this committee's charge, some things kind of got out of our hands. And in my opinion, for what it's worth, this committee has given extremely little regard to the surrounding neighborhood for this entire project. Okay? I mean, let's call a spade a spade. You know, people came up, people wrote in letters, people, you know, the people in the neighborhood didn't want a pavilion as big as what we're doing. And we're doing it regardless of what the people wanted or the people didn't want. So that's politics. That's history. You've had people from the neighborhood come in and speak before us, including a member of the RTM. It's very clear the neighborhood wants a parking lot to look like it did prior to construction. It really annoys me to see such disregard. I mean, that's such a small thing that the neighborhood has asked for. It annoys me to see us spending as much time as we are going against the wishes of the people who are affected the most.
Thank you. Anything else on this subject? Hillary? Steve? Andy? What happened to Andy?
Took a walk.
Bio break. That said, and since the general consensus is we're proceeding in accordance with plans and specifications, we do have to address that allows you to proceed with the UI and everybody else as designed.
Yeah, and I would just note, it does not rule out the option to add more pavers in as,
Oh, no,
as you see what's left of the
believe me.
contingency.
Believe me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that we're, what's that? All right.
Okay.
Stop talking.
Thank you. I think we're, wherever we are, we're there. Report from the Penfield Building Committee Finance Subcommittee regarding review and approval of any outstanding invoices, applications for payment. I think I said to somebody, this is going to be a quick meeting.
I printed this for nothing?
Really?
I'm good, believe me. So what's in front of every, you ready?
Steve, you want to take this, or who's?
Yeah, I'll take this. So what's in front,
Ready? We're going to, go ahead, Steve.
all right, so what's in front of everybody is the invoice packet for, that has been submitted and reviewed by the Finance Subcommittee in connection with Shawmut and Colliers. It contains what's in front of you, 7 different things for approval. The Finance Subcommittee is going to present to the full committee recommendation to act on 6 of the 7 in tonight's meeting. The first is DeStefano and Chamberlain's invoice number 5575 for $10,910. That is for the, per contract, the construction administration fees by DeStefano and Chamberlain for the past month. It's 10% of that. It's in accordance with the contract. We recommend that for approval.
Excuse me, Steve, do you think it's appropriate, or should we ask the committee, or should you ask the committee to approve them all at once, or line item by line item?
Let's go line item by line item.
Okay, thank you.
So
So
we
then-
present that for approval, that invoice for approval.
So the recommendation or motion would be made by you? And I'll second it. And seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Next line item.
Next line item is also an invoice from DeStefano and Chamberlain. It's invoice number 5576. It's in the amount of $9,965. This is for the ad services relative to the revetment change. It was under the authorization that the chairman brought to the committee last meeting as a not-to-exceed price of $10,000. This has been reviewed and approved by the Finance Subcommittee, and we offered up for full approval to the board tonight.
Motion made. Did you make it?
Isn't that my
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain? Thank you.
The next invoice in the package is for Strategic Building Solutions, otherwise known as Colliers, or doing business as Colliers. It's invoice number 16,006. The total amount's $6,596.11. This, as well, is in accordance with the contract the Town of Fairfield has with Colliers for their monthly fee, as well as reimbursables, and I offer that up, or the Finance Subcommittee offers that up for approval by the Building Committee.
Motion made and seconded. Same. All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain?
The next invoice up for approval is invoice number 8, payment application number 8 from Shawmut. That amount of that is $557,266.96. Oh, you have all these, Ellen? Well, I was going to say you're going quick. I'm speaking slow just to make sure you have them. Sorry. Again, as a normal process for those we haven't talked about before, there is a pencil copy that is submitted by Shawmut to Colliers. It's reviewed. There's a memo written by Colliers about what the changes are recommended. The Finance Subcommittee reviews that with Colliers as well, and this is the one that's signed and reviewed as well by DeStefano and Chamberlain, certified by Shawmut and our designer of record. The Finance Subcommittee puts this in front of the board, the Building Committee, for formal approval.
Made and seconded again. Any discussion? All set? All those in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain? Thank you.
The next, I'll say invoice, but it's a change order request by Shawmut. It's change order request number 2, dated May 6, 2016. It is actually a credit for $4,528. And this is a credit for the work that does not have to be performed due to changes in the storm loop. So the storm loop that went underneath the building, looking at some of the savings from 2 different subcontractors, it results in a net credit of $4,528. This as well has been approved by all the parties, including the Finance Subcommittee. We put this as in front of the committee for approval as change order number 2.
Just a technical issue. Why wouldn't this show a credit or parentheses or a minus? or-
Typographical error.
Hmm?
Typographical error.
Okay. Made and seconded.
Is there a
Discussion?
copy of that in the packet?
Discussion?
Was there a like a written description of the credit? You know,
Yeah, there is, and
But we did get one.
I'm sorry, we have all the backup and been through all the backup. I don't know what was handed out tonight, but
Afterwards, if you want, I can show you I have a copy.
No, as long as you
yeah, so,
need a paper copy. of
long
it.
story short, we printed out this is a 90-page document. We printed out the first 19 pages, and the change order requests ended up in the back of the document, so we put in pages 1 through 19, and we didn't realize that all of the change order requests were in the back and not the front.
Okay.
Gotcha.
So I haven't-
Motion
be-
been made and seconded on this credit. Steve, you had a question?
Say, it can be provided. I mean, it's been through all the detail in the backup, and Shawmut's been great in pulling everything together.
Okay. That said, motion been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain? Thank you.
Thank you.
You have two more here, or no?
We have two more on the list. We're only going to discuss one, and I'll explain why. I also want to take the time to explain kind of how this is working, what we're reviewing with Colliers and Shawmut. The next one on the list is known as Budget Transfer Number 4, in the total amount of $5,708. And budget transfers, as we'll go through this project, are requests of Shawmut to use their construction contingency. So it's not a change order to the GMP. It's a transfer of $5,708 out of construction contingency, not the owners, into the project. This one happens to be for the leveling pad, the dirt leveling pad by where the existing pavilion sits now in the parking lot. It's supported as well with all the costs and quotes and everything that's required. And again, it's a net zero change to our project because we already have in our GMP a contingency amount and construction contingency. It's a net zero. It's just taking money, transferring it, a negative, a debit to the contingency and adding it above the line to certain vendors. It totals $5,708 in accordance with what we're supposed to do per contract, and our charter is to approve this budget transfer out of construction contingency. So the Finance Subcommittee puts it in front of the full committee for approval.
Steve, it might be helpful when you get through to show that schedule that you're comparing, which is keeping track, so some of us are losing track of what's going up and what's going down. So when you get through, would you share that with the committee?
I can, however, that's something that Colliers and Shawmut should be tracking, but I suppose I can share it in a spreadsheet.
In the monthly report I sent out, I had my contingency tracker and PR tracker, or allowance tracker as well.
When did the monthly report come out?
Probably before those were on it.
Yeah.
Because they weren't approved, I won't put them on my reports
not in
until you
there.
guys approve them.
No, I didn't get a monthly report.
The monthly report came out a week ago.
I'm not getting.
Colliers also has a.
Came out Friday morning last week.
We got to admit.
Yeah, and Kevin, I just sent you an email. I didn't realize that Steve wasn't on your AE report list either.
I don't know how I missed Steve.
Yeah, sorry, Steve.
I'll remember that, both of you.
We
As I
also
review
have
these
a
invoices.
financial summary report that we can actually send to you at any moment, which has all of the project financials updated.
That would be helpful.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion made and seconded on this budget transfer?
Thank
Yes. Yes. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Against? Abstain?
And while there's a budget transfer 005 on the list for tonight, the Finance Subcommittee still has some other questions, and we'll meet with Shawmut and Colliers before the next meeting, and we'll bring it back up with a resolution and recommendation for the full committee.
Thank you, Steve, and thanks to the subcommittee. It makes our life so much easier as a full committee. So thank you again. That said, the next agenda item is public comment. Old business, new business. Hearing none, motion to adjourn. Thank you. Seconded, thank you. We're adjourned.